A new husband haunted by his predecessor. A woman visited by a friend unaware of her passing. Police chasing balls of light across country roads. Nuclear workers witnessing strange craft emerging from the sea. And much more besides. You're about to hear not fictional accounts, but events reported from real life encounters. Time to open our minds here on Things Visible and Invisible. Andy, the last time we spoke, you gave a very interesting exposition, I guess, of the paranormal activity in the everyday life on both sides of the Atlantic. We talked a lot about ghosts, hauntings, haunted houses, and also people who seem to attract these phenomena. I'd like, on this occasion, though, to talk about other phenomena, other paranormal phenomena. One of the things that's very much in the news at the moment is the UFO, UAP phenomena. Did you come across that in your researches?
Yeah, so I should stress that I began in the world of researching the paranormal 34 years ago by getting involved with crop circles and UFOs. That was the starting point for me, and whatever anybody personally thinks about them, they're going on, they're happening, they're not all explained. And certainly the UFO world has exploded onto the wider scene in the last few years because we've had so many high-level whistleblowers coming forward saying there is something going on. There is a big cover-up. Aliens are here. The fact that they've been having to hold congressional hearings to hear some of this testimony out, I think tells you how far this has suddenly come. And of course, the problem with that is it's also brought attacks from those that don't want it to come out. Some people are talking very openly now that disclosure is about to happen. And whether we mean very soon or in the next few years is being argued about. But there are factions out there amongst higher authorities that don't really want that because they're either protecting secrets for their own ends or they want the technology for themselves. And there's a lot of talk about hybrid, alien and, mankind's technology working together. But it's now getting to the point where just saying nothing's going on seems a bit unlikely. It going on the basis that there's no smoke without fire. I think there's too much bubbling up. And surprisingly serious people, even in amongst American politicians, are now calling for some level of open disclosure. And we've never seen anything like that before. And the book, it was going to cover it anyway, even without that. Talks a lot about UFOs because I have met so many people myself over my many years of lecturing who've told me incredible stories, not just of seeing UFOs. And one good example is I've had 2 cases of people who've seen UFOs coming up from under the sea near a nuclear power station down here in southeast England, but also people that have worked in the military and have told me when they were present in the air traffic control room or whatever, like the classic scene in the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where clearly UFO is being reported and they were all ordered to stay quiet. And as the years go by and they retire, they think, well, you know what, I'm just going to tell some people about it. But I've heard that over and over. So for those that say there's no cover-up, that is plainly silly. There is. Everybody knows it. And I've met many of those people who said I was just basically ordered to shut up about what I saw. But how long can we keep going for on that basis? I discussed that in the book Strange because I think it is now so relevant to what's happening in the world. I think we do all need to talk about this because if there is disclosure, whether it is accidental or catastrophic, as some people call it, or whether it's official, that's going to be very, I think, disorientating. And I think there will be an awful lot of shocked people and a lot of arguing about what's real and what isn't that will follow any level of disclosure. So we're into very interesting times, I think, whichever way we go.
Just pausing for a moment and looking at the people that you've spoken to in your researches, especially on the UFO UAP issue, Andy, what sort of impact has that had on people's subsequent lives?
Massive impact. As one very well-known researcher who's been very kind enough to write a little piece for the book, Gary Hesseltine, for instance, he began as a police officer, and he was in the world of the police, but he started to come across so many UFO cases, he thought, well, surely this should be looked at, and in the end became, one of the best known, certainly British UFO researchers, and he's an excellent example of someone who's crossed from authority into somebody that is now trying to kind of get them to, admit to some level of disclosure. But it's funny, I met another person who was also a policeman, who had an incredible encounter while on duty, and the ridicule that he met when he tried to talk about it was such that he thought, I'm being asked to deny my own reality here, because the profound feeling it left him with, it was almost spiritual, and you'll hear a number of people saying that. It's not just seeing a funny little light. I mean, it can be, but some people, when they have a very, very, shall we say, significant encounter, it changes them inside. It's like they realize there is something here. There is a sense of consciousness about these things they see, and you're not going to be the same at the other end of that. You're not. And he, in the end, could not carry on working in the police, and said he just had to leave, and he became quite religious, in fact, because he was looking for some other way that he could express this profound feeling that he had. And we've heard that from a few of the whistleblowers, like Jake Barber, for instance, who has said that he has been involved with official crash retrievals of UFOs. I mean, he describes an encounter where he had a very spiritual feeling connected to one of the objects that he was, trying to retrieve. So this is, again, we're back to that feeling of it isn't just nuts and bolts craft here. There's some other element, and it can be dark, and I don't think that everything we're dealing with is all universally light and wonderful. I think, again, there's factions up there as well as down here, but equally a lot of people are profoundly changed by it, as well they might be.
In your researches, have you come across people who claim to have been abducted by aliens?
So, I mean, over the years, I've met many famous claimed abductees, from Whitley Strieber to Travis Walton, and, these people have become very famous. What I've discovered is that the people that happens to tend to come forward and then become actually quite well known because they're talking very openly about it. So, yes, over the years, I have met people that have had that experience, but they tend to have already crossed over into being very overt about it, and they're recognized. I didn't really want to do that in the book because I thought, well, we know their stories. I didn't want to cover the same stuff. I wanted this to be brand new material. And occasionally I will relate it to a well-known case as a crossover. So in the end, I thought, well, I kind of think these stories have been told. So I'm sort of focusing a little bit more on other things. And yet, yes, there are a couple of stories in the book where people encountered aliens. And by the way, often in their bedrooms. Now, for those that believe that abductions are taking place during sleep, that would make some kind of sense. But there's two stories where literally they would suddenly see the creature in the bedroom. One of the people is somebody that I know and have known for a long time and trust. And this is the thing, because the accusation is also, not only ridicule, but also you're lying for fame and fortune, because some people have gone on to become well known for it. And the accusation that you're a liar because you say something extraordinary has happened to you, sadly, is again often used to close people down. Yes, sometimes that happens, but in my personal estimation, from the people that I've met, they're just being honest and relating something that was very meaningful to them, and they're not trying to gain anything out of it. And that's true, I think, for a lot of the cases in the book of all kinds of paranormal experiences. They're people that just wanted to tell me because they'd never told anybody before, and I'm sharing it with the world. And sometimes they'll be anonymous, sometimes they've actually then written down their encounter and decided to actually share it, officially under their own names, and that's all in the book. And they've been very brave to do that, because most people that come forward just wind up being attacked and ridiculed. So that's a sadness of our times, but that is changing, because I think there is now much more recognition that this is all far more common than we know.
Now, before we start talking about UFOs, you alluded to something else which I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on, and that is the whole phenomena of crop circles. This, for anybody watching, this is a staple sometimes in the newspapers, or it was when we had newspapers, but it was often sort of a figure of fun or something that was easily dismissed as a prank. It was pranksters that were doing. What is your research is thrown up in that regard?
So there's some stories in Strange about crop circles and experiences in and around them, and often where people have been present, where a formation has appeared right next to them really, really quickly. And that's a serious point because, right, we all know, and I've been researching crop circles for 34 years now, we know that some are man-made. Nobody denies that, right? That's just kind of like old hat boring. Yes, we know that. However, there's many cases where that can't be, where these huge formations have occurred within very short periods of time, often by daylight, when we know when the field was empty, we know when they were found. I have interviewed a number of eyewitnesses over the years who've watched these things occurring within seconds in front of their eyes. And again, you think, well, why would you say that? All you're going to do is get made fun of, and of course they are, and told they're liars and all the rest of it. And they're just sharing something that happened because it was so extraordinary. So just those cases alone, put together with some of the scientific work that's been done and some of the incredible mathematical complexities and geometry in them, and the state of the crop, the lack of damage in many of them, as compared to man-made formations, tells me that however many are man-made, you've got a significant number that really can't be explained so easily. And yes, I think the heyday of the high numbers of formations seems to have shifted, but they're still going on. It's still happening today, and it's still not wholly explained. And the fact that we're still even discussing crop circles now, and new people, especially through like UFO podcasts, are coming to them, not even aware that it was happening, is quite something. It tells you the longevity of this formation. And I've been, very, very involved with the crop circle world for a very long time. And I still am, because I see there is a validity there. There is something going on that absolutely demands further investigation and discussion, even after all these years.
With all your years of research in that regard, Andy, what sort of conclusions are you drawing about the phenomena of crop circles?
Yeah, that's always the difficult bit, because after all these years of being involved, if anything, I think I would say to you that I'm probably more confused now than I was when I began. I think that we don't know what makes crop circles. We can only look at possibilities. Are they extraterrestrial, as of course some believe? Are they extra-dimensional? Is it some psychic connection? I mean, I was involved myself back in the 1990s with a group of people where we were trying to interact with crop circles using psychic forces just to see what would happen. And incredible things happened. We saw balls of light, formations would appear in the shape we had anticipated or right next to the place where we were, when nobody knew where we were going to be and that we were going to be there. Just strange interactions that I cannot explain. So you put that together with the other evidence. One really fascinating thing, by the way, is that underground water seems to play a role when you map out the majority, certainly, of English crop circles, and that is very much the heartland of the phenomenon. Even though it is global, the most seem to appear there. They tend to follow underground water courses, the aquifers, as we call them, chalk, things like that. And that now seems beyond question. And yet there's plenty of counties full of fields outside of those areas that don't seem to get many crop circles. And that suggests there is something also in the ground playing a role. And I suspect that even if there is a conscious force involved, it is probably using a natural mechanism that can already create certain shapes in the crop, albeit more basically. A lot of people now think there's a crossover here. There is something natural, and something's learnt to manipulate that to create further complexity. And you've got the man-made ones as well. So it's not one thing, and I suspect that the answer to crop circles in the end is going to be a blend of many different things all working together. And some of the colleagues that I work with have all pretty much come to the same conclusion over the years.
That's absolutely fascinating. Has there been any sort of serious scientific inquiry from academia, for example, into the phenomena of crop circles?
Yeah, not enough is the answer to that. So the problem we've got is that because the debunking and people saying, I make the ball and it's all a jolly laugh, right? Because that's what the public tends to see. Any university or any public body that might fund proper research won't go near it because they'll say, well, we're not going to waste money on something that is, clearly a joke because they've never looked beyond that surface debunking. That's the problem that we have. However, there have been over the years people that have put private money into researching the scientific side of crop circles. I mean, one of the best known one was a biophysicist called William Levengood, and he did a lot of tests and showed, in my view, categorically that there were changes occurring in circle-affected plants that you could not replicate by manually flattening them down. People manually flattened them, they compared the samples, it was very different. There's a lot of things we could say about that, and also a Dutch researcher called Eltjo Hasselhoff. He and Levengood both have papers published in peer-reviewed journals demonstrating these changes that are very hard to explain. Even then, the debunkers come in and they say, oh, we can explain that, but they don't. And they say that, and that gets the coverage, so you therefore think there isn't any science, but actually there is. And other people have done a lot of scientific work, but, and here's the problem, and this is true, I think, in general of paranormal research, is that you don't really hear about them. You just hear about the standard big-name scientists who are all debunkers and just treat things like crop circles as, a silly joke that you don't even bother to look at. And that's the problem. And that is something else that should be reversed. And what I'm trying to do with the book Strange is, again, throw it down and say, there is a case here. Look at this stuff. Don't just keep dismissing it because you're not pushing science forward here, because you might actually find something if you actually try and look.
Yes, I mean, I think you're absolutely right that when phenomena, strange phenomena we can't explain easily appears, there is an immediate sort of debunking or dismissal of it. But at the same time, I don't know if you'd agree, Andy, there's also an element sometimes that reaches for conclusions too quickly as well. So, for example, crop circles is a classic case where people dismissed it as a hoax. Other people suggested it was immediately something to do with UFOs or UAPs or extraterrestrials, rather than actually looking at it as a phenomena and in the way that you've just explained to us, saying, well, there may be a natural reason for this, there may be other reasons, but there may be a natural phenomena that's happening that we just don't understand. Do you think that sometimes both sides are as bad as each other when it comes to the paranormal?
I mean, polarization is the problem of our times. I wrote a book a few years ago called The New Heretics, and it was about trying to understand why people do believe in conspiracies. But pointing out that the problem is everybody falls into polarity because one side's attacking the other. People tend to then group together and they become very tough about what they believe because in a way they have to. They feel they have to protect it. The problem with that is you wind up just shouting at each other across a divide. And yes, I mean, crop circles are a good example of that where, we found very early on, back in the 1990s, when, research was really kicking off properly, that people were getting into sort of echo chambers of, thinking, even before the internet had come in. And then they were getting very protective of their theories. And the trouble is, when you go down one path, you stop looking at all the other things that you probably should look at and you probably should take on board. And then you attack anybody that looks at another side of it because you're so sure you're right. And that's been a problem, not only in crop circle research, but paranormal research in general. The colleagues that I worked with, we thought, you know what, we don't want to go down that road. And we soon realized that the only way to stay sane was to embrace the mystery. So, look, we don't know what's going on here. Let's look at all the theories. Let's look at all the evidence, right? Let's just say what we see. Right, we observed this in this crop formation. We observed that. Okay, what can we make of this? And then you share that with other people and you let them then interpret that as they want, rather than us saying, this is what you must believe. And there's too much of that. And that I learned that lesson very saliently in the crop circle world some years ago, which is why I try to be all-encompassing here. Nobody knows the answer, and therefore for any one person to stand up and say, but I really do, it's not going to be good enough unless you've got incredible evidence to back that up, and as yet nobody has. So it is all speculation, and of course the media leap on that, because they want certainty. They want a good solid story. A man with a plank of wood smashing down the crop, there's a good story. They can see that in front of their eyes. Us talking about, it could be extraterrestrial, it could be psychic. They don't want to hear that, because, you can't sort of give them anything solid to go on. And that's why I think they tend to default to the nice, easy and rather entertaining kind of man-made theory. But that is not the whole story by a long chalk.
Unfortunately, our time has come to an end here. Andy, tell people where they can find out more about your researches and also pick up a copy of Strange.
So if you go to my website, truthagenda.org, so that's truthagenda.org, you can find out all about me, what I'm up to. There's lots of things to watch there and to read, and you'll find, lots of details about the book Strange, Paranormal Realities in the Everyday World. You'll find the book in anywhere that sells a book. All the usual places, you'll find it out there. But there's a good starter point page on my website where you can get all the basics, and you get some links to some of the places selling it.
Andy, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.